Okay, I'm going to break this drawing down into steps that are way easier to follow than you might imagine so that you can create this and amaze yourself. Okay, so as explained in the intro, I'm going to break this down into steps so that you'll learn about the painting process and techniques, as well as about the app that I'm using, Procreate. That isn't to say you couldn't use a different app on a different tablet and still follow along. Having said that, within the app Procreate, I'm using the default A4 canvas, which is 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. I'm also using the default color profile, the sRGB code, the one that ends in 2.1. Also by default, Procreate has a range of brushes, and I will only be using the brushes that come free with the app. As we get to the specific points in the tutorial, then I'll tell you what brush to use and how to use it. And then the only other thing that you really need in preparation for the tutorial is the correct colors. Now, each of these colors, if you go to the value section, has what we call a hexadecimal code associated with it. Each of these codes is listed down in the video description here, so you can copy and paste them into this box one at a time, press enter, the color will appear up here, and then you can tap it into a blank color palette for yourself. Or alternatively, next to the codes in the description is a link that takes you to my Patreon page where you can download the color file for free to save you some time. And Patreon is also the place that you can support this channel and gain access to exclusive content such as extended versions of most of these tutorials. I'd like to say a massive thank you to those people who do support me over at Patreon. It really does make a huge difference, so thank you so much. And if you'd like to support this channel but Patreon really isn't your thing, then you can simply subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, maybe even leave a comment. All of these things really help out with YouTube algorithm and it's much appreciated, thank you. And with all of that said and done, we're going to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my colors. I'm going to use this second color on the top row, drag it from the color circle into the canvas and it flood fills. Now, before we get any further, I just want to make you aware that the colors on my screen may end up looking a bit different than it does on your screen. That's simply the camera that might slightly adjust the colors, maybe make them look a little bit more blue, for example. But as long as you've got the color codes from the description area or you've downloaded the color palette, then you are using the correct colors, even if it looks just a little bit different on camera. Next, I'm going to go to my layers and create a new layer, layer 2. I'm going to use the third color on the top row. I'm going to go to the airbrushing, medium brush, 3% size and 100% opacity. I'm going to start about the middle point on the left side, maybe just a little bit lower than the middle on the right side. And then I'm going to create like a valley, a dip in the center, and it just banks up on either side. I personally feel like I've put that a little bit too high and it's easy to fix. You go to the transform, move it down a touch, and there, I'm happier with that placement. I definitely want plenty of space at the top and a little bit less at the bottom. I'm then just going to put it up to maybe 8% size and just fill in the bottom area. It's going to get covered over with all the other colors that we're going to use, but it just helps to visualize when we have it filled in like that. I'm then going to create another layer, layer 3. I'm going to go in with the medium brush within airbrushing. I'm going to put the brush size maybe about 3% and 100% opacity. And then we're just going to have some trees, and depending on how you press, they're going to be lighter or darker, and that's absolutely fine. I don't care about the overall shapes. Not really. Most of these are going to be obscured by other things. I'm going to turn it down maybe to 2% so we get some thinner ones as well. Don't be overly precious about these at all. They're going to be obscured by other things. We might actually knock it back with some mist and other things. So we've just got a layer of those. And then I'm going to go to the Taralier brush within Artistic. I'm going to go in with the same color, same layer, maybe about 5% size, 100% opacity. And I'm just going to create a mass of foliage up in these areas here. Now, it is pressure sensitive, so if you press lightly, you're going to get a lighter version. Press harder, you get a darker version, and it does vary in size a little bit as well. So it gives you the opportunity to create some variety of texture, which is really good. So tap it lightly as we get lower down. I want a really big mass of it up here. Maybe over here on the ground, we can just create low-lying kind of bushes, foliage, organic matter down at the ground level, obscuring that initial line that we created. It's more of a guide. And then as we come further up, press lightly. We don't need to change the opacity from 100. I think it's fair to just really go at it with 100%, but just change the pressure instead of your application. And then another big mass of foliage over here. So we're really obscuring those tree trunks, which is why I wasn't going to worry about it. I knew we were going to pretty much cover it, render it non-visible. Invisible, wouldn't say invisible, but we can't see much of the tree trunks by the time that we've gone over it anyway. Obscure it. And then, well, when we get to the center, we want to leave more gap, more of a blank area. So I'm just going a little bit more carefully, tap in a few points of texture in here and really let it kind of disappear. Maybe a bit more in the center area. Again, just a few taps to fill in some of these gaps. And that's fine. Maybe just at the edges, close it down a little bit more, like so. What I might do with layer 3 is tap on the end and just dial it back a little bit, put it somewhere around the 60%, and tap out of it. I'm going to go and create another layer, layer 4. I'm still going to go in with the third color on the top row, still with the Taralea brush. And then because we've subdued the layer underneath now, when we go back over it, perhaps we'll turn it down a little bit. 3% size, still 100% opacity. We can create some darker textures over the top of that. And wherever we leave gaps, we're going to see some of that background texture still coming through. And it is just a process of creating layers of texture to begin with. Perhaps I'll turn that down even further, 2%. Just zoom in a bit. And then we can really start to tap in around the edges. Again, just going at that ground level, create some more bushes and organic features. Just keep panning around the canvas. Let's put it up a little bit more again, actually, 3%. Not quite ready to be too refined. So you can see we're creating layers of texture. Can circle some of this in again, allow it to cut in front. Some of those other features we've just created. Big circles, blot out big areas, and then tap around the edges just for some little breakaway textures as well, little leaves. Same in this area. Try to keep it random. If you're doing it too much in the same movements, you're going to get some obvious shapes. So just try to vary it up a little bit, keep it quite random. Sometimes you have to just kind of reset your hand so you're not just doing repetitive movements. Maybe just blot out much of this center area. You can still see a lot of the colors coming through from the previous layer. And then I'm going to switch back to the airbrushing medium brush again. 2% size, 100% opacity. Well, we've got a darker layer, so we can still create trees that cut in front. Let's put it up again, 3%. Some slightly darker, more prominent tree trunks in the mix. And it kind of joins those areas together. Let's go to our layers and create a new layer, layer 5. And we're going to move along to the fourth color now. I'm going to go back to the artistic Taralea brush. 3% size, 100% opacity, perhaps a little bit much, maybe put it to 80. And then forwards of everything we just created, we can have some slightly different colors coming in. So we're not taking it right up to the very edge, a little bit down from there. We're just creating some textures and allowing it to be kind of random little taps that all cluster together, and I'm deliberately, I'm not doing it as one straight line. The way I'm applying it is more kind of just randomly, trying to be as random as possible, just a scattering of shapes more like this. Let's tap this all the way across. And then underneath that, so you can afford to be a little less worried about the texture, we can kind of blot in again underneath that top line. So let's put it up maybe 4%. And again, we can just fill in. We're going to have other colors that will obscure this anyway. But you can see even when you fill it in, it kind of has a mottled texture to it, which is quite suitable, quite pleasing. Everything is very rough at this stage, and that's absolutely fine. So still with a Tyrolese brush and this fourth color, 80% strength, maybe 3% size. Well, I'm going to start tapping in. In fact, let's go for a bit smaller. Let's go for 2% size. We can start tapping in some of these more textures in the higher areas up here still. And this is very much still background tones and colors. We haven't really identified any main tree features yet. This is just a general sense of foliage in the background. Much more distant. We can also perhaps go to the organic rainforest brush. Now I'm going to reset it, tapping it again. Stroke path, spacing, I'm going to put it up to 45%. Done. Still with the same color, 3% size, 100% opacity. And we can start to soften in some of these textures. Sometimes we want the textures to be really noticeable. Sometimes a little bit of softening in works for us as well. So we can just soften some of this in. Bring it down various points, drop it down into the lower areas, becomes a bit more visible. Blend in some of those lower ground areas as well. Go to my layers and create a new layer, layer 6. I'm going to move along to the 5th color, which is quite a bit darker. We'll stay with the rainforest brush for now. Lowest part of 3% size, and maybe just a little bit down from 100, maybe about 80% opacity. And we'll bring in some of this color, just a little bit back from that edge. So we're getting this kind of fading sense, things pushing there in the distance are getting a bit lighter in tone, they're getting more subject to the atmospheric condition of our little scene. But then we're just starting to fill in below that point with organic textures, colors, tones, and that's starting to work for us quite nicely. Again, we can perhaps put that up 4 or 5% and just fill in that bottom area again. Again, it doesn't really matter, we're going to cover it over with lots of other more vibrant, rich colors as well. You can see it's starting to build up the overall look. Now I'm going to create a new layer for this, layer 7, and I'm going to go back to the airbrushing medium brush, stay with the 5th color, 3% size, 100% opacity, and then we're going to have some trees that are much more prominent, that just cut up, and we're going to have to really think about the overall shape of them at this point. So we want a thicker trunk, obviously, and it will get thinner as it slightly goes up. Now the brush is pressure sensitive, but it doesn't get thinner with less pressure, it just gets lighter, so the opacity lessens. You will have to go over the tree trunk just to broaden it up at the base. So make it thicker at the base of the tree and then allow it to become thinner as it grows up. We'll just set the line in place first, then go back over the trunk area near the ground and make it a bit thicker. Have it go the edge of the canvas, why not? Whatever you feel at this stage, it doesn't have to be an exact copy of what I'm doing, any of my tutorials for that matter. Let's get some more in here. Don't have to be straight lines, they can be a bit kind of wavy. So wherever your first line puts it in is kind of probably going to be okay, and then you can just go and tidy up the shape a little bit. We can also have some thinner ones in there too. We can also push them back in a moment if we need to. So I'm going to go in with the eraser, put the eraser on the soft brush with an airbrushing. I'm going to put it to maybe 4% size, 40% strength, and I might just knock that one back. It's going to make it more distant, and I don't want it to be as tall. And then anything you've just added, you can just knock it back a little bit, subdue it if you want to make it more distant. I don't want it to reach up quite as high into the scene. Find the balance of the trees that you want. Back to the brush. I'm going to turn it down even further to low, maybe 1%, 100% opacity. And then let's just get some finer branches coming off from some of these trees. If they're lower down, maybe they just break away and they don't quite become much of a branch. I think most of the branches I want to keep higher up in the tree. Let's put it low on the 2% so I can just achieve a slightly bigger branch. Again, just like the tree trunks, go to the beginning of the branch and make it a bit thicker. It gets thinner as it goes. These aren't necessarily the most prominent trees yet, but they definitely need more detail. Some branches, for example. I'm going to create a new layer, but I'm going to drag it underneath layer 7, so behind these tree trunks. I'm going to stay with the 5th color though, and I'm going to go back to the artistic Taralea brush, low on that 2% size, 100% opacity, and I'm going to start tapping in some foliage. What I might do is go to the Taralea brush and just stroke path spacing, put it from 15 up to 30% spacing. I'm done. And that allows me to create more of a foliage look. A few more gaps. Let's put it up in size, maybe higher on that 2%. And you can see now that introducing the gaps just gives it a different quality, allows you to create that sense of broken kind of foliage, leaves, and it can be really useful. Now, I'm going to keep a lot of this for the higher areas. We can blot out much of the colours and the details that we've already put in there, and that's fine. Now, I'm having this as a layer behind, so if we need to go over with the tree trunks and change the colour of the tree trunks, we can do. And obviously a tree is 3-dimensional, so you can have foliage that sits behind the tree trunk and then foliage that sits in front, depending on where you stood in relation to the tree trunk. So we're doing a layer behind to begin with. We're just using this one colour initially. That's not to say that we won't go in with other colours in a moment, because we absolutely will. And we can, rather than creating everything on separate layers, we can actually alpha lock the layer, and then we can use some other colours within the alpha lock just to really change up the overall colour scheme. Now, if you're not familiar with alpha lock, don't worry. I'm about to explain that in just a moment. Some foliage in there. I'm just going to put the brush size to 3% size. Let's go for 90% opacity. I want to blot out more areas actually. I want to make a bigger impact with some of this. The more that we blot out, more within the textures, actually we can add more textures using the alpha lock. So let's create a nice flat base of this color so you can hardly see the tree trunks. But it's fine, we can salvage them, we can bring them back. But let's just blot them out a little bit for now. We're going to add a couple of trees for the real foreground as well. But we're not quite there yet. Might go to the tree trunk layer, layer 7, tap on that and put on the alpha lock. Go to our colours. Perhaps we'll move along to the 6th colour. We'll go in with the Taralea brush at the same settings, but we're going to put it to maybe 2% size and less on the opacity, so maybe 30% opacity. And then we can just start bringing some of this texture up into the tree. And you don't need to be overly precious about this because it's got alpha lock on, so it will find the tree trunk. It'll bring it out. You just need to sort of scribble in that area almost. And yeah, it starts to locate the tree for you, bring it out, and it's also giving it a little bit of texture there as well, which is great. Bringing it forward. I'm just initially just doing it at the top areas without any real care, Be quite rough, free with the texture, and you can see it's just brought them forward, which is quite useful. Perhaps we'll change colour again. We'll go for the 7th colour. We might just switch brushes, perhaps go for the airbrushing medium brush, high on the 2% size, maybe only about 30% strength. And we can just start dragging up into the tree trunk a little bit more, some longer gestures, in addition to the textures we've already got. Again, the alpha lock is on, so you don't need to worry. And then down here, press lightly when you get down to the bottom area. Definitely want to darken them up, but we don't want to just completely jam the Apple Pencil in and completely flatten the look of the tree trunk, really. I'm going to go back to layer 6. Behind the tree details we've already created, I'm going to go back in with the 5th colour on the top row. Artistic, Taralea brush, maybe 4% size, 80% opacity. I feel like there's just a bigger area here that I just need to blot in. I want to do some lighter colours over the top, but I don't feel like I can't do that until I've got a base of light, of dark colour rather, to actually apply the light colours to. I want to show the effect of the sun really impacting on the foliage, but we're just creating a really nice background. We're just shutting down more and more of the light that's coming through, creating some dense foliage, and then we can show the impact of the sunlight upon it. So we've really just filled in that middle area. So once I've created that there, then I'm going to go for a lighter colour. So I'm going to go backwards to the 3rd colour on the top row. I'm going to go in with the airbrushing soft brush, 10% size, 10% opacity. And I'm just going to start at this side, just gently bringing in this sense that perhaps just disappearing into the distance in this area a little bit. And it's going to bring forward the tree foliage from the tree that just sits there in front of it. Just create some distance, like so. Then I'm going to go to really vivid light green, the 8th colour on the bottom row. Back in with the Taralea brush with an artistic, 3% size, maybe 60% strength. And I just want to carefully start to apply some of this, impacting some of the foliage, various points back here. Now I don't want to overdo it at this stage, but I definitely want to start showing some impact of the sun that's going to be pouring through in sun rays from this area. So I'm just subtly bringing them in the back area to begin with. Not too much, just a smattering of that, just to start setting the stage a little bit. We might also, from layer 6, create a new layer, layer 9, but it's above layer 6 but below layers 7 and 8. I'm going to tap on the little N, scroll down to the add blend mode. I'm going to go to the 10th colour on the bottom row. I'm going to go in with the airbrushing soft brush, 10% size, 5% opacity, and I'm just going to start deciding where the sunlight is really coming into our scene. It's going to be up in this area, so I can really just make that decision. It's not to say it won't come through in other areas too, so we can show its impact creeping through the little gaps, but we'll just show the impact of it. And this is really going to be useful just to start to make sense of the scene. Without this, we're going to struggle. To get that in place, then I'm going to turn it down, 3% size, and even lower, maybe 3% opacity. And we've got the sun, but we're going to have some sun rays coming through, and it's going to be like a vanishing point. So everything goes up to that vanishing point, and you can start from over here, for example, but it goes upwards, and the vanishing point might be up here somewhere, but you need to make a decision where it is. I'm sort of saying it's sort of maybe just slightly off, but I'm generally pointing these lines, these sun rays, towards that point, even though I'm angling around, changing direction. Maybe turn it up a little bit, maybe 5%. I can start to just make them a little bit clearer. Don't worry about the bottom section, we can always just remove that, tidy it up, rotate the canvas if you have to, if it makes it easier for you to do this. You're doing it in small increments, so it's not going to destroy anything particularly. It's not going to be too rapid. You can undo the effect if it's too much. We don't want to do all of them just yet. We can just start to set the atmosphere and the kind of sense of it to begin with. And we're going to do some rays that cut in front of some of the details as well. This is kind of sitting behind to some extent. So we've got a sense of it anyway, but we've not finished. We can even go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we can blur that maybe 10%, and it softens it in, but it has left us with the impression, the kind of general look we're going for. I'm going to go to my top layer and create a new layer on top, layer 10. And similarly, I'm going to go back in with the 8th color, back in with the artistic Tarot brush, 3% size, 60% strength, and some of that foliage now. Knowing where the sun is coming from, we can start to just imagine that it will be impacted on those edges. Just a little bit here and there, cutting in front of some of the tree trunks in places. We don't want to be too heavy-handed with this. We want to keep it a little bit sparse. Maybe we can dial it backwards from that, so we don't want all of it to be super strong. Maybe go to the 5th color. Have some slightly warmer tones in here. Pepper some of those in. Let's create a new layer, layer 11. I'm going to go to the organic rainforest brush. Again, the spacing at 45% within stroke path. I'm going to use a darker color, so I'm going to go for the 6th color on the middle row. 2% size, 100% opacity. And well, we're just going to have to start building in some darker tones, darker textures. And I'm quite happy to use a mixture of the Tarot brush plus the rainforest. That way we're going to get a variety of different textures, which is quite nice. So we've got the background sense of these textures, and now we're just going over the top of them, creating some textures that really come to the foreground as well. It's all about layers of colours whenever you do foliage and kind of forest aesthetics. So I'll just keep going over it. Different colours, different hues, different tones. It really starts to build up that impression. Again, you can create some really heavy sections of texture in here as well. Let's try some other greens. Let's go for the 3rd green on the bottom row. And it's really going to be much more vibrant, and that's fine. We've got some really vibrant greens coming through here. We need to start dispersing these different greens throughout. It's a really warm green. We could even go for maybe the 1st green on the bottom row. It's a lighter hue, tone rather, but it has a slightly cool look to it as well. So disperse some of that around. Okay, we're going to go and create a new layer, layer 12, and I'm going to deal with the ground layer. We'll stay with the rainforest brush. We need a dark tone, so I'm going to go for the 5th color on the middle row, 3% size, 100% opacity, and I'm just going to bring in this tone at the ground level, restate some of that darkness. Whoops, let's not be too untidy. Reclaim that ground. Like so. Then we go to another color, maybe the 6th color on the middle row. Some slightly darker greens even, a variety of different greens cutting through here. Especially as we get closer to us, perhaps we need to go for an even darker one. So maybe they go for the 7th color on the middle row. Get some really nice dark, rich greens coming through here in the foreground. Just start to create that sense of perspective. Let's go for the, let's go for the 8th color. Just create some variety, an even warmer green. It's not noticeably that much different. Let's go for the 9th. Again, just creating that richness, variety of hues and tones. 10th color on the middle row. That's quite nice. And then we've got an even darker few colors at the very top. So maybe the 9th color. Disperse that through that bottom area, and it's just creating that sense of distance. And even the 10th color, that black color, we don't need much of that, but just hints of it coming through. And we'll blend it through, add more features in there as well as we need to. But just to start with, it's starting to create that sense of distance. Then we'll go to our layers and create a new layer, layer 13. And then we just need to start populating this area, creating a kind of path and sun hitting the ground with lighter colours. So we'll go for the first colour on the bottom row. Still with the rainforest brush, 2% size, maybe 80% strength. And well, we can start just peppering in some lighter colours on the ground level. Maybe a touch bigger actually on that 2%. Even the same percentage can have a little bit of a variety of size. So within the 2%, you can get a big 2% or a small 2%. Let's go for the second colour. Again, create more richness of those greens. Let's go for the third colour, why not? As we're coming back here, we're starting to populate now with some really nice lush greens, and let's really go for it. Let's go for the fourth colour green, and this is going to be noticeably brighter, so we just need to be a little bit careful with it. We want maybe dappled sunlight coming through. We've definitely got the sun rays, so they're going to impact the ground really substantially. So just tap in. So this is obviously a lot of foliage and other features, organic. It just sweeps through the center area specifically, creating a lot of light. Tap in a few, there's leaves and there's bushes that are just catching the light, just so. Then fifth color, and this is ramping up. It's even brighter, and you can see the impact now. The sun coming through, low on that 2% maybe. Be a bit more specific. Again, creating that light. A few taps. Loose organic details that are just kicking up and catching the light. Let's move along. Let's really go for it. Where are we up to? We've done the fourth and the fifth. Let's go for the sixth, which is really nice, sort of yellowy kind of green. Now let's be a bit more careful now. So we're going to have some little patches that start to break apart. So there might be another patch up here that's separated, another one here, and it creates that dappled look. Not too much fine tuning at this stage. Let's move along. I want to go for maybe the eighth color, and this is really vibrant, really bright, and it's just going to help us lift and create that absolute brightest sense of luminosity, I think, within the scene. It's really important. Like so. So we've got that nice vibrancy. There seems to be a little bit of a jarring difference between that background and the foreground kind of light. So I'm actually going to go in and subdue it. I'm going to go to the first color on the bottom row, and I'm going to go in with the soft brush with an airbrushing, 3% size, maybe 20% strength, and I'm just going to soften in some of these green areas there in the middle, slightly above that vibrant green. I just want to blend some of these areas together a little bit more successfully. And then I'm going to actually encroach into that vibrant green a little bit, just bring it down, subdue it, and we will go over it again. But I'm just binding some of these areas together. They feel a little bit jarring, a little bit separate. And we've already set the stage. We know where to put those highlights now. But this is just going to build everything together, and we can go back in and we can re-establish, but it needs that sweep just to hold it together and make an overall impression that works. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 14. I'm going to start creating some rocks on the ground. So we'll go in with the 10th color on the top row, and we'll go in with the medium hard brush, 2% size, 100% opacity. And well, we're just going to create some angled, really bold shapes in here that really jut out. I'm not going to be subtle with these at all. It's a hard-edged brush that really helps us just create some really angular shapes. You do as many or as few of these as you prefer. If you struggle with rocks, and rocks are not my favorite thing to do either, but if you struggle with them, then don't do as many. Just do a small number of them just to create an impression of them. Then we can go to the layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock. Go to our colors, we go to the 9th color on the top row. And then we can just start to create some tones to vary them up. Just tap them through. Don't need an awful lot of time spending on it. Not for this first tone, it's only subtly different. We're just hitting the top of those shapes with it. Then we'll go backwards to the 8th colour. Tap a couple of times through here as well. Let's look at our colours. Well, we can go backwards, maybe skip one, go to the 8th, or rather the 7th colour. Let's narrow our brush down a little bit, 2% size, and then we can just start to be creating some little shapes amongst our rocks, little bits of the surface that catch the light in a slightly different way. And we're going to add some warmer tones in a moment. If the sunlight is hitting the grass and really illuminating the grass, then there's every reason why it's going to have a strong impact on the top surface of some of our little rocks and stones. You can see I'm not really spending a huge time just doing the details. I'm just tapping through, creating a smattering of that hue just to create the impression. Then I'm going to go maybe to the 9th colour on the bottom row, and the sun is catching it in places maybe, and you can see the impact that that would have. Maybe turn the opacity down, maybe 50%, it's a little bit strong, but just along that edge. In places, if it's just sneaking into the light there, you can see the impact it has. We don't want to do it on every single rock and stone, just to create a little bit of an impression. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to do a tree now as well. It's a lot more foreground. So the 10th colour on the top row, medium hard brush will do, 5% size, 100% opacity, and let's just get a tree in here that's much more prominent. I feel like it really is lacking something without a more prominent tree, so just be a bit mindful. We definitely want it to be thicker at the base, like that. And where else do we need a tree? Well, I feel like we need another one back here. The black is way too much, so let's just go for a lighter tone, maybe the 9th colour on the top row. Still probably a bit too strong, but we can subdue it and knock it back. Another one here, 3% maybe. Obviously we want the base of the tree to be broader, and then bring it up, it gets narrower. And then obviously we can have branches that come off from it as well. Another branch just coming in from the side, maybe even a tree trunk, or another major tree here. Turn it down, 2% size, little anomalies, branches, and this is a different tone going over the black tree, and that honestly doesn't matter at this stage. We're going to introduce different tones to this, different hues to this tree as well. Let's tap on the layer, put on the alpha lock. Let's go to maybe the 8th colour on the top row. Let's stay with the medium hard brush, 3% size, maybe 50% strength. I'm just going to start tapping in. Mainly on the left side, the light's coming from the kind of center, but doesn't mean it's the only place it gets texture, but we'll preference it a little bit on that left side of this tree, for example. Slightly more on the right side of this tree, and this one, and that one. And then we'll go for a more, well, a lighter color. Let's go for the 7th color. Like this. Run it through. And then we can even go for warmer colors. Let's go for the 10th color on the bottom row. 2% size. Let's go for 40% opacity. And there's just going to be some sunlight that comes through, highlights the edges of our tree in places. Maybe the 9th color for these ones. Just illuminates the edge of the tree in places. Turn that down even further, low on that 1%, so you can just create a divide of that line, split it. Some more over here as well. So it's hitting the rocks, it's hitting the tree. Again, you've got those two colors, so 10th color, use a combination of the two perhaps. Then we need to deal with the base of the tree. So what I would suggest is we go to the layer, turn off the alpha lock, smudge, put the smudge maybe on the organic rainforest brush. Again, the spacing is at 45%. Click done. 3% size, 100% opacity, and we can just blot in the base. It just helps blend it in with the organic matter on the ground. Just grounds it in the environment quite nicely. We need to go back to layer 14 and create a layer. So it goes behind those new tree trunks. We need to go and create some nice rich foliage. So we've got some dark greens here for these trees. Let's go for maybe the 8th color on the middle row. We'll go in with the organic rainforest brush, 3% size, 100% opacity. Let's not mess around. Let's add some really nice foliage into these areas. This is just a background selection of foliage for these trees. And then, well, we need to vary it up. Let's go backwards. Let's go for the 6th color on the middle row. Create some variety. Maybe some lighter tones, maybe the 1st color on the middle row, on the bottom row rather. You know, everything's about mixing and matching and changing things up. We don't get stuck with one particular color scheme. And then I'm going to go to the top and create a new layer, layer 17 on top. And again, we're going to do something very similar. So I'm going to go for, let's try the 6th color on the middle row, 100% opacity, and it's just going to cut in front in many places. Obscure much of those trees, just really put them in context. We can even just build in front of the tree trunks at the base. Just going to knock them back. Let's go for a more vibrant set of greens. So let's go for the 4th green on the bottom row, 2% size, 100% opacity. And then again, we're going to have to show the impact of the sun coming through here, really impacting some of the foliage. Less so on this side, maybe just the edges. But as it comes in this direction, certainly it's going to impact more. So we can add it to the ground, we can add it to the trees, maybe turn it up a little bit, 3% size, tap it in. Let's go for a lighter color. Let's go for maybe the 5th color on the bottom row. Lighter colors up here and around, some more down at the base of the tree. We can start building in some of that sunlight on the ground again a little bit. Getting more context, more positioning of the major elements now in a way that we can just start to ramp up that overall look. Okay, I'm going to go back to the layer that we had the sun rays on, which was layer 9. I think I'm going to further exaggerate that. So I'm going to go for the 10th color again on the bottom row, and I'm going to go for the airbrushing soft brush, 10% size, 5% strength. Let's just go in there and continue to ramp some of that up. I want to push that even further again. I think what I might do is drag it above layer 8, and it just then diffuses some of what was on layer 8 and makes it a little bit more invisible. And then the sun rays have a bigger impact as they come through. I'm actually going to add some sun rays above. So I'm going to go to the top layer and create a new layer, tap on the N, put it to the add blend mode again, still with the soft brush, still with the 10th color, and maybe from this point we can further exaggerate the sun rays. So let's put it down, 3% size, 5% strength. And we're bringing it through, and now it can really start to impact on the ground. We can really firm up some of these rays. And you just need to be very decisive where you want them to be. I want them to be really vivid, really bold, almost exaggerated in a kind of anime aesthetic really at this point. It's a little bit exaggerated, and I quite like that. And we can have it cutting in front of the tree trunks and the foliage. And it kind of fans out as it comes around here. Again, it's all pointing to the same location of the sun, obviously, and some down here. And it's quite a forgiving, keep adding it in these areas. Perhaps just want to bulk it out in this center area a little bit more. And that's beginning to really build everything together. I'm going to turn down 2%. I just really want to be controlled with some of these lines. I want them to be even more sharp. And we can completely control these. We can go in and we can erase them as well. So if you feel like you've gone too far with any of them, well, you can just go in and put them back in the correct amount. So erase soft brush, 5% size, 40% opacity, say, and we can remove them if they go too far, subdue them as much as we want, control them, shorten them, back to the brush, exaggerate them, find the correct amounts that, you know, really works. Turn it up 5% size and just maybe just plot out in front of that tree, knock it back a little bit. And it is at the very top, so it will do that. I feel like there's a tree here that needs to be subdued back. So where were we? We're on layer 15. I'm going to tap on it and put on the alpha lock, go in with the soft brush with an airbrushing, and I'm going to go for maybe the 7th color on the top row, 3% size, 20% strength. And I'm just going to knock it back a little bit. It's a little too dark and I want it to be just the overall position, not be as dark as these two. So let's go over a little bit and it will knock it back. I think that works better in the overall placement. And even perhaps this one a little bit too. Knock it back a little bit. Brings this one forward perhaps on the left and this one forward too. Repositions things a little bit. Sometimes you have to just reevaluate things. I think on layer 10 there's too many of those things, so I'm just going to get rid of layer 10 completely. I think it works better without it. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. And I'm also going to go back to layer 6. I'm going to go in with the smudge. I'm going to put the smudge on the painting turpentine brush, 10% size, maybe 50% strength. Whoops. And I'm just going to start undefining some of, not a very good term, but just smudging in some of the foliage back there. It's a little bit too defined. It's a little bit distracting. I don't want too much definition back there. I want it to be a little bit more sketchy, softened, not quite as vivid. And then we've also got a layer down here. So where were we? Yeah, layer 5. Do the same for some of the details just there. Soften it in. I think it works better that way. I'm going to go back to where we had the rocks. Where were we? Layer 14. Tap on it, turn off the alpha lock. I'm going to go in with the smudge, put the smudge on the organic rainforest brush, turn it down, low on that 2% size, maybe 60% strength. And I can just, in fact, let's put it to 100% strength, just soften in these rocks, the bottom part of them, just mushes it into the ground, gives them a sense of placement, makes it a lot less jarring, which definitely helps. And then going to go up to layer 17, where we had some of the highlights, and we're going to further enhance the ground areas a little bit. So back in with a soft brush, maybe the 5th color on the bottom row, 2% size, 30% strength. And just add like some of this golden glow into the environment. We want to preserve this sense of dappled light, so just some broken areas, just a little bit on its own back here, a little bit on its own here, maybe even just a kind of almost foreground little dapple there, another one in here, and just disperse it around and that will help. Maybe go for a lighter color, just go for the 6th color on the bottom row, and again we can just further continue to build in. And we've got a stone there, so build in some dappled light around the stone. When it's illuminated, it makes sense that we've got sun that is around it. There's light as well. Let's go even lighter. Let's go for the 8th color. It's super light at that point, which is quite nice. And you can just pepper that back there in the background a little bit. Disperse it around. Maybe go for some of the cooler colors. Let's go for the 1st color on the bottom row. Maybe just deliberately place some of these colors down here. Just in the shadows, some slightly illuminated pieces. I'm going to go to the inking dry ink brush. I'm going to put it at maybe 5% size, 100% opacity, and I'm going to go to a couple of light colors, maybe the 8th color. I'm going to go in with the smudge, put the smudge on the inking, the dry ink brush, maybe 10% size, 100% opacity, and well, I'm just going to drag up some of these textures. In fact, let's do it more positively than that. Let's go to the brush, dry ink brush, 8% size, 100% opacity, and let's add some deliberate blades of grass in here. Only just a few. Let's go for a slightly more subdued, the 5th color. a bit more subtle. And we can just start to pepper in some refinements. Doesn't need to be a massive amount, just a few. And it can go a long way. I might on the ground go in with the 9th colour, airbrushing soft brush, 2% size, 40% strength. And maybe on the ground we've just got some earthier colours coming through, as well as the green. It doesn't all have to be one tone, it looks slightly nicer as a kind of path. Getting some earth coming through as well as the grass. Maybe the 10th colour in the shadows, it's just a slightly different tone. Around here. I'm going to go back to layer 18. I'm going to slide and duplicate it, which is it's massively too impactful, but it gives you the option then to tap on the A of the top version, dial it back to nothing, none, or ramp it up more, and you just get the sense the, by degree, by percentage, just by ramping it up a little bit more, maybe even only to 20% on top, and the two together, you can see as it was, an extra 20% on top. So I'm going to take the top version, tap on it and merge down. I quite like that extra strength. Okay, I'm going to leave this tutorial here at this point. I hope you enjoyed following along. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and hit subscribe, and I shall see you back here soon.